Freddy here, back on the desktop for another retro RPG. And while I was looking through my collection last time for violence, I found this, Pantheon, another new style game from Hogshead Publishing. I love these games. They were dirt cheap. $3.95 is still the price ticket on the cover of this. And they were very interesting games. Let's skip to the back cover and go over that. Pantheon and Other Role-Playing Games is 5 groundbreaking and gut-busting games in one 24-page book. Face undersea horrors in the claustrophobic Grave and Watery, fight your scheming relatives in Boardroom Blitz, double-cross the mob in The Big Hole, trample Tokyo and destroy all buildings, and battle for control of the universe in Pantheon. All 5 games in Pantheon use the narrative cage match, a fast and furious system of rules that pit players against player in a non-stop free-for-all competition with no referee or GM to get in the way of the mayhem. Only the strong will survive, only the cunning will win. Whatever the setting, your worst enemy will be the other players. Can you twist the story's plot to lure their characters into a suitably painful doom before they do the same to you? Each game in Pantheon is for 3 to 6 players, takes 1 to 2 hours to complete, and can be played several times. Complexity low, originality high. New Style is a range of mind-bending RPGs by the world's top designers. Other titles include the award-nominated Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen, the controversial Violence, and the acclaimed 2 games in 1 book, Puppetland Power Kill, which I also have somewhere else. I'll dig that out in the future, but not soon. Pantheon is tense, exhilarating, and very, very funny. So, going over the rules themselves of Pantheon, open up. I haven't mentioned this came out in the year 2000. It's by Robin D. Laws, who is kind of a big thing in role-playing. He includes the games Feng Shui and Hero Wars, co-design work on Kingdom of Dragons Past computer game, upcoming novel The Rough and the Smooth. To research Pantheon and other role-playing games, Robin staged a hostile takeover of a major corporation, fought off an aquatic monster, dug up loot buried by the mob, apotheosized... I don't even know how to say that word. Apotheosized? And crushed Tokyo beneath his massive scaly feet. Photo credit Valerie Laws, so his missus took the picture, I guess. The rules. Step into the narrative cage match. Basically, these games are storytelling games. Each player makes up a sentence which must involve their character. The scenario set up may detail characters, or they may create characters of their own. If they try and affect another player, the next player may challenge, or other players may challenge their sentences using dice rolls, and they have a selection of beads to use, which they can bid on to overrule other players' sentences. So that's the rules that details how the challenges work, how you determine the winner, but we'll come to that in the scenarios. We've got an example of play here where, setup doesn't supply characters. Kate must create her PC during her first sentence. She says, Muffy Taylor, recently voted Grimden High School's perkiest cheerleader, asks if anyone has a cell phone. It's James's turn. Muffy's boyfriend, Biff Martin, dials for help, getting nothing but static. Now Michelle goes. Dee Dee Devine, disaffected goth chick, rolls her eyes and gets out of the van. John goes next. Computer Club Vice President Josh Dingley watches in horror as Dee Dee is immediately impaled by a scythe. Well, obviously, Michelle doesn't want her character killed, so she'll challenge that. So she wins, and she rewrites Computer Club Vice President John Dingley watches in sexually repressed horror as the neckline of Dee Dee's blouse gapes open as she climbs out of the van. So that's how it works. You can rewrite people's sentences if they're taking your character in a direction. Your idea is to do the other players harm and come out a winner in the story. So, looking at the first story, we have Grave and Watery. Something is aboard the experimental deep-sea station Amrita. Something that you, a dedicated team of research scientists, never bargained for when you signed on to this mission. You signed on for record-breaking 6 months of habitation in an undersea complex perched on the edge of the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of any ocean in the world. And it's got character setups, and it's got the setup of the chapter. So you want to be the survivor. The game goes on until people run out of beads, and then you come to the score sheet, and it details at the end of the story, your character is the only surviving PC, you get 12 points. Is one of only 2 surviving, you get 9 points. If you had a romantic scene with your PC and another player, 6 points. Story ended with 2, you in a romantic clinch, 3 points. Is one of 3 surviving PCs, 3. And so on and so forth. You've got special scores for different characters, which is set up in their backgrounds. And that's it. You cooperatively build a story, trying to screw over the other players in the narrative of the story, and bidding to avoid that. And then you score up at the end to see who best played their character, who did the best storyline. The next scenario is Boardroom Blitz. It's finally happened at last. After decades of heart medication, liver transplants, hip replacements, chemotherapy, treatment for cyanide poisoning, and physical therapy for various gunshot wounds, the old cod did kick the bucket last night. So you play family members who are trying to get the person's will, take over their corporation. And again, you've got the scores here. Special scores for Mercedes, Todd, Jimmy, Becky, Buck. You own DMAC stock. You own 51% more of DMAC. You own less stock than you started with. You have a luxury hotel chain. And you get your points and see who wins. The Big Hole. And that's a story where you are people digging up a trunk of stuff the mafia has hidden and trying to avoid getting killed. Now, there's a list of characters here, but they're not really detailed. So, in this case, you've got a lot more generic points. You were the first player to introduce the following plot complications. Then we've got Destroy All Buildings, where you're playing giant monsters, I guess. You're the first player to describe a destroyed village, churning waters, damaged ground vehicles, etc., etc. Your human PC dies. Pantheon is the final adventure, which really doesn't do much detailing. In the beginning there was nothing, now what do you do? And there's just scores. There's no real setup for that one, which kind of blows my mind. And that's Pantheon. It's a very interesting idea. It's not something I would ever play, I don't think. But it's not beyond the realms of that. I could definitely see a group of players sitting down and having a go at this when the main game's been called off or whatever. It's definitely an alternate to board game night, which is what my group tends to do. If we're too short on players, we'll break out one of the old board games, or even a new board game, and we'll play that instead when we don't have enough for a role-playing game. But Pantheon's definitely something I could see you sticking in your bag, turning up to the game, there not being enough players, so having a go at this. And that's this week's Retro RPG. Thank you very, very much for making it through to the end of the video. Please like and subscribe if you like what I'm doing at all. But most of all, yous look after yourselves. I forgot to say last time, but don't ever think that I don't think that of yous. And I'll catch yous later. Bye.